Mel Albin. I'm the host and the founder of the Jazz Confusion
My
Power
name
Hour.
is Dion Parson, and I'm honored to share my passion of music with you, our listening audience, through my cultural heritage.
Things can change for you too. If you want to be brand new, that is absolutely possible.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Jazz Confusion Power Hour. I'm your host, Mel Albin. I'm the founder of the show, and I want to thank everybody for tuning in again each week. Let me start off by telling you a little bit about the show and why I created it, and then a little bit about Source Radio Network. I started the Power Hour because of the changes that were taking place in FM radio, where more and more stations were going off the air. In fact, today, 30 FM stations go off the air every day because of some of the syndicated radio stations like iHeartRadio or Radio One that pretty much dominate, have taken over most of the radio programming that's being done. So a lot of local programming has fallen by the wayside, and so have a lot of jazz and R&B, soul, and blues stations. So I started the Jazz Confusion Power Hour so you can hear some of the music, some of the best jazz, R&B, and soul artists that are out there. And also at the same time, so you get to know something about their background, how they produce music, how how do they produce, write songs, and how do they record. And what I found was that more and more people are interested because this gives them some understanding of the getting behind the mind of the artist and how they create the music we all love. So that's why I started the show. The show is on the Source TV Radio Network. The Source TV Radio Network is a nonprofit 501c3 radio station supporting jazz crossover into any genre, and also supporting small Black and minority micro businesses. This helps them build scale to get on the finance industry radar and ultimately create and increase the generational transfer of wealth, assisting communities with equality and equity. We also depend on listener donations and contributions, so because Source is a nonprofit, to cover our costs of broadcasting. So we also look for mutual support from the artists that we have on the show. We help promote them, and in turn, they help support Source. We also depend on sponsors and also the general listening public, you people out there tuning in tonight, to make contributions that are always tax deductible. Now, a little bit more about the Power Hour. The Power Hour has had over 150 amazing guests. In fact, we're probably pushing near 200 now. Some of them are extremely well known, and some are becoming well known. Some of the artists in the Power Hour include Eric Roberson, Mesa, Brian Culberson, Paul Brown, Steve Davis, Felix Cavalieri, Raheem DeVaughn, Reagan Whiteside, Alex Harris, Samara Joy, Greg Adams, Tom Brown, Pieces of a Dream, Kamasi Washington, Keiko Matsui, Sheryl Crow, Billy Ocean, Annie Lennox, Blake Aaron, Her, Celine Johnson, Mavis Swan Poole, the late Bobby Caldwell, Jeff Bradshaw, Jeff Beck, Dion Parson, Tammy McCann, and Eric Burden and Kelly Finnegan. That gives you some idea of the range of the kinds of artists that we've had on the Power Hour. And tonight is no exception. Tonight we have two guests that are very well known to a lot of our listeners. One is Robert Cutarella. Bob has been on our show several times. Bob has 160 platinum records to his credit. He has 2 Grammy Awards. He has over 3,000 songs that he's co-written or published or produced. And so, Bob has a long history within the radio and music industry. So Bob's our guest tonight. I'll bring him on in a minute. And we also have the pleasure of having Marie Antoinette. Maria is going to tell you a lot about herself. Maria is a harpist, and Maria has had a lot of success making the harp a front instrument, a lead instrument in jazz music, and it's an oddity to some extent, but it's a beautiful sound and really adds a great variety, tonal quality, and richness to a lot of jazz. Tonight, we're very fortunate. We're going to be listening to her newest release. It will be released by the end of the month. It's called Fierce, and it's a whole different sound for Maria. Maria's had success previously with a single called Africa, which was shot to #1 on the charts. And we're going to let you hear that tonight, and let you hear a recording that she's working on with Bob. She started doing the recording for Fierce, and then she decided to engage Bob to help her make Fierce more fierce. So without any further ado, let me bring on my guest for tonight, Bob Cutarella and Maria Antoinette. Welcome.
Hey, Mel. Hi, Maria.
Hi, Mel.
How you doing?
Hi, Bob. Doing great.
Good.
You're missing
good.
a harp, Mel. That's what you need. You need a harp back there.
Well, Maria's providing the harp.
Going. Right.
Maria's providing the harp. Anyway, I thought we'd start out. Maria, why don't you tell everybody a little bit about your background, a little bit about some of your recordings. I'd like to play Africa as a prelude to Fierce, which is your most recent recording. So why don't you give somebody some background?
Okay. All right. For those of you who don't know and want to know, my name is Maria Antoinette, and I'm what they call a smooth jazz R&B funk harpist. Now try and wrap your head around that one. You're like, what did she say? So I came from a traditionally classical background. It was my foundation, and learned all the skills and, all the things that we learned in music school. And actually worked in the symphony. It was a harpist in the symphony in Los Angeles. But the whole time I said, I want to make this harp funky. I want to make this harp sexy. How am I going to do that? Because really nobody was really kind of doing it like I had envisioned to do. I grew up in a household with R&B, gospel, all the trimmings that my ear could hear. And so my whole thing was, how do I take this instrument, traditionally classical instrument, and move it into a smooth jazz R&B funk type setting. So that was the beginning. I had a great career doing all the other stuff as well, but how to transition from a classical artist into smooth jazz. And so I got with the wonderful producer. Some of you may know the band called Fat Burger. And their musical director was my first producer. And he took me by the hand and he showed me the way and took me into the recording studio with him for about 1.5 years as I just watched how an album comes together. I didn't have any idea. We're going to talk about that because most people don't really know how an album comes together. And so he took me into the studio as he produced singers and other artists. And I was telling Mel earlier that it's like baking a cake to put a record together. That's my analogy of it. When you're making a cake, you got the flour, the eggs, the butter, the sugar, and everything. And it's the same idea when you're putting a song together in the studio. You've got the rhythm section, you've got the vocals, you've got strings, and you've got the main instrument, whether it be sax, harp, or somebody singing. So it's the same concept, and we're going to talk about that. So that was my journey, and here I am, just about 4 albums later. Really still pushing my music, my ideas, and like Mel said, the harp in terms of this genre is different. He says odd, but it is different to see the harp in a setting of smooth jazz. We had Dorothy Ashby, we had Alice Coltrane, who really made the harp very, very popular. So we do have some background in that. But for me, it's like I wanted it to be funky. I wanted to do some other things that had not traditionally been done with the instrument. And so I've had some success on the charts and with my albums. Overture was one, which is sort of a rock feel type of vibe with the harp. And then from there, we had Fly Away that became #1 as well on the smooth jazz charts. And then just recently, we had Africa. And I had taken a tour in Africa, and it was so impressed with the rhythms and the polyrhythms of the continent that I wanted to do something special in regards to that and really paint the picture of that continent, but through music. So that became #1 for 3 straight weeks. And the follow-up, which is what we're going to here tonight is Fierce. And me and my producer put it together, and I wanted a Dr. Dre feel. And me and Bob had talked about that. And I said, I wanted sort of a Dr. Dre feel, really kind of cool. But I didn't think after we did everything, it didn't sit right with me. So I was sitting there and we went on to mix and master. But it's still, as an artist, that it's like, it's good, but it's something missing. And so just so happened, Mel introduced me to Bob, and we got to talking. And he goes, well, what are you doing? And so I said, well, I'm getting ready to release a single. And so he asked if he could hear it. So he heard it, and he goes, you can't release that. I was like, okay. And he goes, it needs to have more life. It needs to come alive. The drums need to pop. And I agreed with him. I said it was something missing. And I just could not put my finger on it or what it was. So anyway, we talked, and I handed over some stems to him and let him work his magic. And he did. And so now we have a remix, which I was going to put out the old one, but I pulled it back. And so we have the remix of Bob's flavor and touch, Do Believe, and my rhythm and my drums. And it sounds really fierce.
Wonderful.
So,
let me bring Bob into this for a second. I know when I was going to introduce you, Maria, to Bob, I wanted Bob to hear some of your music. When I sent the music, Bob, what was your impression of Maria and the harp and her music?
Oh, unique, different. She could play her butt off, and I was sitting there going, "Okay, how can you do something different here?" We've been discussing another concept, which is totally different, which is secret. Was secretive,
yes.
But we'll unveil it at some point. But I mean, the truth of the matter is, there's an acclimation period. A lot of people just don't know what a harp does. This is what a harp does for most people.
Yes,
it's
right.
an moment. Oh, beautiful flourish, but they don't know, like what Maria has done is she's taken it a whole different dimension. She's like, okay, I'm a lead instrument. I can be a background. I can be a rhythmic instrument. I can be a lead instrument. I can be, flourishes in the background. I can be all of that. So I can decorate my palette in different ways. And I think what ended up happening for me from the oral palette, as I was listening, and she had mentioned Dr. Dre. Yeah, Dr. Dre had not a formula. He just knew what he was doing in studio, but he captured each artist a certain way. And stylistically, that song, melodically and all, doesn't feel like a Dr. Dre song.
Right.
I knew what her producer was trying to do, and I don't like to mess with other people's work, but I could hear that. And this wasn't an issue of introducing elements that had to be contemporary, new, right on top of everything, because everything new is old. All the old stuff comes back and bites you in the butt. So, I got comments back saying, "Oh, you use drum loops. Well, maybe they don't use as many today." And I was like, "You use what's appropriate."
Right. Absolutely.
In my head,
yes,
you use whatever drives the rhythm. And in this case, the missing element was something driving the rhythm. And so we both agreed on that. And because we both agreed on it, she allowed me to experiment that way. And I think, at the same time, smooth jazz is not going to play something bombastic. So you're not going to put drums like boom, cha, boom, boom, cha. You're not going to go crazy that way. I mean, because they won't. But this, I think, hits more than one genre. This hits world music. This hits smooth jazz. This has a crossover potential and a potential to introduce her to a broader audience, which is something that's necessary because, as we've all been, complaining about, is smooth jazz is fantastic. and then it has a limited audience. The audience keeps shrinking, and if the new people don't jump and board, there's where do you go? You know, who's the
You know,
audience?
let me try to reframe this a little bit too. Africa was, I guess, Maria, your biggest hit prior, and Fierce is going to be even a bigger hit. But Bob, did you recall listening to Africa?
Yeah, when I heard it, I thought it was awesome.
Yeah. I want to play Africa. Then when we start getting into Fierce, I'd like to hear a kind of comparison of how she's shifting gears between that style and Fierce, and how hard it is to shift gears. It's not easy.
Mm-hmm.
You know. So, you know, now if I'm wrong, please correct me, both of you, but that's when I listen to Africa, I hear something. The tonality is completely different than what I hear when I listen to Fierce. So it's not easy when you're trying to experiment and do something new. And I think I want the audience to understand the complexity of these transitions. So let's play. I'm going to play Fierce for everybody. I'm sorry,
Africa.
Africa. Yeah, for everybody, and then we can come back and talk about it. Okay.
Okay. Yes, yes. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
We have comments already. Janet Carson, I love Africa. I bought it, I think, a couple of years ago, and I can't wait to hear Fierce.
Thank you.
But you got more? Never
But here it is.
imagined.
Yeah,
harp in
I never imagined a harp in jazz. This is cool.
Yes, yes.
Paula Dennis, love the orchestration and the Afrobeat.
Mm, very
know,
good.
Mel,
You're getting a lot of interested listeners already.
Mel, you ask about transition. First of all, the mood of Africa itself, starting with the kalimba and the whole Afrobeat thing, it captures it right away.
Yes.
So you're in right away, right? I mean, you don't have to even think twice. And because it's happy and joyful, that's what you usually think of when you think of those wonderful African celebrations and the
Right.
garb and everything else. And I think as the song progressed, your playing got more intense, and it's just you're in. You can't leave it. There are certain things you listen to and you go, you leave.
It's funny you mentioned the celebrations, Bob, because when I listen to it, I hear all the colors,
Yeah.
and that's what I mean. It's
the giraffes walking across the plain.
Yeah.
The animals, the safari. Yes.
It's a marvelous, marvelous song.
Yeah.
And the harp becomes so. And I guess the word is, in my mind, it becomes so infused and critical to make that song dance the way it does. It wouldn't have that same impact without a harp. So this is something that's really unusual to me, because I never conceived of the impact that a harp can have.
Right.
In jazz, it just never would have occurred to me.
Right. Well, I think the one thing is because there, and we've talked about this, is the preconceived notions of the instrument itself, because people have in their mind, the harp is a boring, dreamy kind of instrument, like you said, glissandos. Oh, that's beautiful, that's nice, but to really bring it front and forward and very powerfully present it is something different. And I think Dorothy Ashby did it, but she did it in a different way. Alice Coltrane as well did it, but in a different way. But I already had my idea what I wanted to do with it. And so I think that's part of it too, because we all have our ideas and our visions of what we hear in our head and try to bring that to the forefront to make everybody else see what you see.
I've always thought of the harp as melodious, and you make it staccato and powerful. It's totally different, so, like I said, I've always been impressed with this. So let's talk about your evolution a little bit, Maria, and your move to your new upcoming release, Fierce. Why don't you talk a little bit about how that project came about and the recording that you did?
Yeah, well, as I said a little bit earlier, I was shooting for a sort of a flavor of Dr. Dre, and the very first you'll play it. The very first Fierce had an element of it, but we didn't nail it. So, and that's what I was sort of like not feeling all the way in on it. Because in the middle,
how would you describe the Dr. Dre feel? Bob, Maria, both of you, why don't you just tell our audience what that is?
Well, Maria, since you had the concept, maybe describe what you felt. I haven't,
Well, when you listen, okay, let's go here. When you listen to a Dr. Dre, you're in, like you say, you're in the first 7 seconds. And hold on one second. You're in on the first 7 seconds. I'll call you right back. You're in the first 7 seconds, and just like this beat, this feeling of whoa, like oh my God. And so that that is my deal. Is like if I don't have them on the first 7-8 seconds, I've lost out. So my introduction has to be as strong as that. So that's what I was feeling like. Say California Love. If you go there, California Love, how just boom, 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 boom. I tried to get that with the first Fierce, da 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 Bring, bring. That's what I was hearing. We kind of got it, but it still didn't quite nail it. And then in the middle, the staccato notes at the lower base of the heart. Didn't pull it off there either. It was kind of like, I don't really like that. And then when Bob redid it, we completely took it out, which I was very happy about. So that's kind of my concept there, with the whole, I was trying to get that feeling, but, wasn't able to execute it. But anyway, I think the New Fears, we didn't do it either. We didn't really go there, but it's still a powerful piece. It's still powerful.
Well, I wasn't. Yeah, I was.
It's alive. The piece is alive.
I wasn't going to try to replicate what the conversation was about a Dr. Dre track. Because,
no, I know.
First of all, the composition is not a Dr. Dre type composition,
right?
And
absolutely.
That was the first thing that struck me. Not California. I mean,
right?
It's not riding that kind of vibe and that feel. This is a very intense feel. And in order to capture an intense feel, it requires something that's just moving it and pushing it and pushing it and pushing it.
Right.
And that's kind of what we were trying to do. I mean, I easily could have made it more impactful and bigger, but I was really cognizant of the fact that radio has their restraints. It's going to be difficult to get a harp on radio to start with. Since you've done that in the past, I'm ecstatic that you can go back to that because, you did it successfully in the past. But, when you make a move like what I was doing, which was kind of a remix, but also at the same time, I was kind of trying to reproduce some of it, take out some of the unnecessary steps and let's get to the meat of it. That's what we did. We took out some of the intro. And, it had a big arrangement to start with. So there's a purpose behind the arrangement. So I'm not going to mess with that and strip it away because I felt like that was part of what made it bigger, and alive. But there were things that just needed change and things instead of the same. When you have a melody that has a sameness to it, a lot of times you're trying to break it up. So we broke it up, trying to have a descending line with the bass following the harps line, the doom, 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 that leading into the second kind of chorus. These elements don't become apparent until you pull apart the tracks and you have all the individual tracks in front of you. And then you can look at those tracks and you go, okay, so let's see. And with something like this, you take the bass and the drums first, because bass and drums are always the foundation of the house. If the bass and drums don't lock, if they don't feel good together, forget it. Never going to sound right. Never. That's why, I'll take you there and songs like that. They lock in so deeply. You can't pull that apart. Nothing pulls that apart. So now whatever you do on top of it is gravy. And great songs, it's more than gravy. They just.
Maria,
a lot of other elements for.
Maria, what was the concept behind Fierce? The title, the concept, not just the sound you were looking for, Dr. Dre.
But I really wanted something really powerful. Now, to follow up with Africa, I wanted something very strong as well. I don't want to have something come out after Africa and then it'd be a downer. I wanted to continue that tradition at the same level, but keep it even more powerful because that's my signature. And I always have strings. So that's, the same thing. But I wanted to present a different way, and I think that's me because I'm open to, many different styles of playing. Even if I don't know that style, I'll figure it out or, whatever's brought to me. Like, okay, I think this is kind of cool and work with it. But I really wanted something powerful, but in a different direction than Africa.
She didn't tell you that she also wanted me to dress in traditional garb as I was, and film it as well. Like, okay, I am the king.
I have a silly question, Bob, that you could probably answer. Maybe Marie can too. What kind of instruments don't go with a harp, like horns? how do you make, if you wanted to use horns, how would you make that work with a harp?
Well, you know
Correct.
what? Before you answer that, you make it work. Because if you go to my song "Another Star" by Stevie Wonder, straight out horns in there. Okay,
Okay.
Bob.
Okay, no. So instruments that might not work. Let's put it to
Oh, you said might not work?
Yeah, might, yeah.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
tuba.
There you go.
But tuba doesn't work with a lot of things.
Yeah, it won't work with a harp, that's for sure. Yeah.
A Jew's harp, no offense, Jew's harp.
What about a harmonica?
You never know. You know,
Yes, the
blues, you
arrangement.
could do a blues kind of arrangement, sure. Harmonica, like a blues harp, you could wail, and she could be playing. Do, 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 do. You know, it's an arrangement issue, Mel.
Right.
It's not a silly question.
Yes.
It's just an arrangement issue because I have a friend of mine who has a band called Hazmat Modine. All right. The bass player is a tuba player, no bass. This guy plays the lead instrument. He plays anything you could blow into. He's got a million different, and he plays an incredible harp. He's got a great guitarist. He's got an electric violinist. And then he's got a three-piece horn section and keyboards and drummer. And the three-piece horn section, you know, how do you make that work? Just arrangements. And he plays very odd, different time signatures and all. But it's the least likely thing when you take a look. If you look at the stage and you've just been so programmed to see a bass player there, keyboard, guitar, drum, you know, you're programmed. You're not used to seeing. And honestly, if I didn't look at the tuba player, I would think that a bass is filling up those gaps and the bass is pushing the rhythm.
You know,
And it's kind of a puzzle, but
what I was thinking about, and again, I'm just thinking about what the harp introduces into jazz. I was thinking about Bickley and combining a steel pan with the harp. You know, somebody that Maria, that Bickley, that
Interesting.
Bob's working with, Bickley Rivera. She's a phenomenal steel pan player.
Oh, okay.
And you guys should meet.
an arrangement. It's truly
That's
about
right.
an arrangement.
It's all in the arrangement and what pieces we're going to put together. It's like a puzzle.
Yeah,
You know, the pan is going to go over here, the harp is going to go over there.
and you said it the best. It's a puzzle.
Yes.
What I was thinking about was some of those Latin influences and the harp moving into Brazilian kind of sounds, and you know, having a steel pan. I think I'm just trying to suggest that the harp opens up a whole different dimension of music in jazz. It's remarkable to me, the kinds of things you think about combining.
So you just heard Africa, and Africa has a kalimba in it, and a steel pan can play kalimba rhythms and almost sound like a kalimba.
Yes.
So it's interesting. These things work. You can, and you might not be able to identify it. You know.
Right. That's actually right.
There are some of the things we did on Fierce, you wouldn't identify. You know, there's another project I'm working on. We deliberately put sounds in that nobody can identify. Whether they like them or not, that's up to the listener's ears. But if somebody's sitting there while we're working on it, I'm like, what the hell was that? But my ear just went there, but not in a negative way, hopefully. My ear just went there, and I'm curious. Now I'm curious. What's that? What is that? Yeah, it's the beauty of what we all do, right?
Yes.
We get to play in a lot of arenas.
Yes, we do. Yes.
What I'd like to do is play the original Fierce that you first had recorded, and then maybe we can talk a little bit more about what some of the changes that you thought were necessary. Then we can play the remix version that you did with Bob, and you can both kind of dissect both of them in terms of what you were trying to accomplish, and do you feel you accomplished it? Okay.
Yes.
So I'm going to play the original Fierce that you recorded, and then we'll play the final version. Okay.
Okay.
That's really cool. Like, we got some comments coming in. Technical error. Sorry about that.
It's okay.
You liked it so much, we played it again.
Exactly. But let me here's an interesting comment. Joel Peterson. I'm trying to hear Fierce in the harp. It's not quite there. What do you think? I really want to hear the final version.
There it is. He nailed it.
You nailed it. You know, it's interesting because we have a very sophisticated music audience. I do every week. But what's interesting to me is they're enjoying listening to how a song develops.
Mm-hmm.
So, and here's another comment with Zachary. Cool. Okay.
Yes. Okay.
So why don't you tell everybody, Maria, what did you hear that wasn't working?
Well, if you remember, I'll just start in there's the section in the middle where I do this bing, 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 bing. That was not working. And my producer did insist on, for me to do that. That is somewhat of a Dr. Dre, a little bit flavor, but we just didn't pull it off in the right place. That part right there. And I don't think even the intro wasn't strong enough where it really, because I said I like to capture people in the first 7-8 seconds. Like, whoa, what is that? So that wasn't quite there. Ending, I mean, it was a nice art presentation. Let's put it that way.
It's interesting to me because, a lot of artists, they have a music director, they have an engineer, they have a producer, and sometimes never the twain shall meet. The people you're working with sometimes get into this situation where they're kind of competing with each other, and the artist isn't getting what the artist wants out of the music. And I think
that's called ego, Mel.
It's called ego.
It's called ego, but
yeah, absolutely.
But the truth of the matter is, live gigs, you might want to approach while you have a music director in a live gig. You may want to approach it differently because you have an audience responding right in front of you. Right. And a record is something that you keep forever, and maybe in an audience you try out different things and then make the record. That's another approach, because then you know what's working, what's not working.
That's right. And that has really fueled me in some of my recordings when I do covers.
Sure.
I had a client that asked me, very high-end client, Beverly Hills, and she wanted me to play her wedding. So she goes, but Maria, I want to come down the aisle on an male R&B vocalist song. So I said, okay, well, let's kind of look and see. We got Kim, we got Luther, we got Smokey, we have, a plethora of male R&B artists. I said, the thing has got to work with the harp. It has got to be melodic. So, went to the book and just kind of like went through some things. So I said, I think this Luther song, there's Luther. She goes, that's it. She hadn't even heard it. I think Luther will work, so amazing. And she goes, that's it. And I go, I didn't even have an arrangement for it. I just, knew melodically that would work. So to make a long story short, I played a solo version of So Amazing, her coming down the aisle. When she got to the minister, everybody clapped and looked right at me like, oh my God. I knew at that moment, I go, I have to record that because the audience responded to that. And to this day, when I play it live, I get standing ovations. Plus it has all the instrumentation, the strings and all that going on. But it is really a favorite in my show.
You could tell Luther right away out of all the ones you mentioned. Smokey is cool and everybody's cool. But Luther.
Yes. Yes. And they're not expecting that again on the harp, and so it's a very powerful piece as well. So, if you want to try it out on an audience before you record it, that's a good way of doing it. And I've done that several times, and those songs have been very popular.
I'm just curious, in deference to your producer, he produced Africa too, right?
Yes.
And that's a great track. He did a great job with that.
Yeah. Yes.
Fantastic. And this is what I found with artists. Sometimes you just have to move one way or another a little bit and bring somebody else in to get what the artist wants. It's really the artist that is important, not the arranger, the producer.
That was our conversation.
Right.
Our conversation was strictly that.
Yes.
Yeah.
And how can we make it, Bob had said, it needs to come alive. Immediately when he said that, I knew what he was talking about. It needs to swing. Oh, yes, we need some swing.
Well, and that was the other thing. You're playing in the swing vibe, but the track was doom, ba, doom, ba. So anyway, when you hear this now, you'll
Now, one question: if I named it something else, if it didn't have a Fierce title, it would have worked? It would have worked. You see what I'm saying? Because the title sometimes sets up an expectation.
But you chose that title for a reason.
I know, but I'm just saying,
No, I understand. But again, this is coming from the artist.
Yes.
And sometimes, and Bob, you can speak to this. Sometimes, the artist is like drowned out, and
look, you know how many Tommy James told me that even though he was signed to Roulette Records and they were mafia guys, right? He said nobody else would have let him produce his own stuff, and he would have been dead in the water. There would have been no Tommy James. There'd be no Crimson and Clover or any of the Think We're Alone Now. Would have been none of it, because Tommy had a vision, and most record companies during that time period had staff producers. That would have squashed it. Boom. So anyway.
Well, okay. So when you and Bob started working together, what were the initial conversations like?
It needs to come alive. We need to swing. It's too stiff.
Same conversation. There wasn't that much going on in the conversation.
That was it. Those 3 lines.
It was really like, okay, what do you think the issue is? Got to come alive. It's got to swing.
Come alive. It's
and
yeah.
I'm curious what the comments are going to be. That's what I'm curious about, being honest with you.
Well, I told Bob when I finally got the mix, and I was at home, and I cranked it up with the speakers. It was a Friday, and had a glass of wine, and so I could hear everything. And I had to stop for a second, and I said, "Now that's a bad B right there." That is kind of really hot. I loved it. I was smiling the whole time. So
I'm happy for me to hear that.
Yeah.
Well, let's play the final version of Fierce, and maybe we'll get some comments from people about the comparison of the two, and then we can kind of wrap up. So this is the actual version being released, right?
Yes.
From Fierce. So let's hear that. Wow.
Very nice.
I mean, I hear the difference. Here's some comments coming in from people. Joel Peterson, who said that he didn't hear fierce. He said, now I hear fierce. The harp is on the top and the rhythm section is a whole different place.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah. It's definitely alive.
Yeah, Ann Henry. When will the LP be released? I want this.
You can get an advanced copy.
Yes, yes.
Paul Chester. The harp bridge in the middle now makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Musician. Yeah.
Yep.
Very nice. Very cool.
Yep. You got a lot of people are really enjoying this tonight. And I love it. The second version, what I hear, I think the audience, the comments already captured what I've been hearing.
Right.
Now it is the harp.
Yes, yeah. Well, it's another thing too in recording. My experience is that, again, even as it's a subliminal thing, is that even I think maybe as a producer, sometimes they still want that harp somewhat in the background.
Yeah.
And I have to continue to say, the harp, I'm the harp, I'm the lead. You're mixing up all the strings and stuff like that. I'm getting lost back there in the sauce. Bring the harp up, bring the harp up.
It's also interesting in the recording process, because I wasn't there for recording the harp, but the first thing my engineer, Matt Noble, who's a phenomenal guy and great engineer, producer himself, first thing he asked was, where are the mics placed?
Mm-hmm.
Where are the mics placed on the harp? Because your sound is coming from the back, from the front, from the top. You could probably have 5 mics on a harp and to capture a full surround sound kind of experience. It's the way it resonates, the way it, is recorded, so many different variables. Our producer did a great job. I take nothing away from I love what he did with Africa.
Yes.
And I love the bones he had for this.
Yes.
I just felt he was just missing something. That's all.
Yeah, right.
And, and it's with me, sometimes people say, what did you change? You won't believe how much stuff gets changed.
Yeah. I heard it right away. Right.
Yeah.
And, just it's much more lively. It's not stiff, because it was stiff. And it needed to open up. It feels free now.
Something that I think Peterson mentioned the comment, the harp bridge in the middle now just jumps. It just jumps out at you.
Yes.
And in the first version, you don't get that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Mel, we cut out intro. We cut out some. We cut out some in the middle. There was no point in rehashing similar things that are going in the same direction musically. Right. This gave it a departure point. This became, okay, this is the departure point. Now we can float for a little bit. This is floaty. This is a little airy. This is, and then let's bring it down only to bring it back and bam, hit you. And that's what it's supposed to do.
Yes.
In my head.
Yeah.
Well, I think this is just, again, this is why I brought you two together. I think this collaboration between both of you really works.
It did.
And again, as Bob said, taking nothing away from your producer, sometimes another ear.
Yeah, and that's really, you're absolutely right, Mel. It's another ear, another fuse of some fresh blood in there. Yeah. So people he heard something different. Just like I heard it, but I couldn't put my finger on what it was that was unsettling to me. Said something is missing here. When he brought in those drums and made them swing and made it come alive, we took out the part in the middle of the bridge and just made it jump. I'm like, okay, it's open, it's free now.
Wait till you hear the new thing that we're discussing.
Okay.
New project, Mel.
Yes.
It's quite different.
Mm-hmm.
How many songs have been released from Fierce so far?
Well, we haven't released anything yet.
Oh, okay.
So the audience are getting the first.
Oh, wow.
Great. Hearing it, because July 31st is going to go, live. And so from there, we'll just see what happens and continue to push it and everything. I'm trying to get a video together. I think that would help as well, because Africa has a video. So we need a video now.
Yeah. And the Africa video was excellent.
Yeah.
The Africa video was excellent. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, well, look, it's a pleasure having you both on. And this was the kind of show I really wanted to have, so
Thank you.
get a feel for
Thank
how an artist does a final production of a song. How does it happen?
Mhm.
So,
And when you make changes, people, a lot of people don't know this. A lot of times in the end, I had to pull it out of distribution at the 9th hour. I didn't know I could do that until Bob said, no, all you got to do is do this and do that. And I'm like, it's on its way. He goes, and I pulled it. I was like, whoa, so I learned something new.
Again, it's all about the artist. It's like I wasn't trying to push just for me. It was like, I hear something here that I think will make a difference. I hope it makes a difference. And you're the artist, you control what distribution channels and all. You're not, you're controlling that ball. So a lot of people get hung up on that and they don't know.
I've told this story a lot of times because it tells you something about an artist and what's important to them in terms of what they put out. Brian Culbertson told me he put out a song, I think it was called White. I could be wrong. And he said he listened to it, and about a month or two later, when he heard it on the radio, he said, "Damn, I forgot to put the horn in."
That's funny.
And, but it's so funny because, first of all, it's never over till it's over. That's the first thing.
Yeah.
And the second thing is, if you're really a good artist, you'll always hear something you could have done better.
That's a producer's dilemma too.
Yeah,
I could have taken this one out here in one bar, raised it, up the octave, and for that one beat, and then somebody look at him like, there's a producer named Trevor Horn.
Well, thank you both so much. And this is a new thing we're doing. You're the first, Maria. There's some other people I'm going to have on. There's one or two other artists that Bob's working with, that I'm going to do the same thing with their music, because I want people to understand the process of producing a song.
Yes.
For the public. It's interesting how these things happen.
It's not easy. It's a process,
Definitely. So thank you both. It was a great show and great music, and good luck with Fierce. I think it's going to do sensationally well. Yep. And I think it'll do as well, if not better, than Africa.
Okay. Bob, I'll reach out to you.
All right. Thank you. And thank you, my dear. Thanks for having me on the show, Mel.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Mel.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Well, that was phenomenal. I'm glad I did this. I wanted to have, bring to everybody an artist that you're somewhat familiar with, because she's been on my radio station and on the Power Hour before. And she's just an amazing artist. And Bob is just an amazing producer. And I wanted to put these two together to try to get her what she wanted, because she called me and said, I got this problem. Something's not right, and I said, well, I think I have a solution. And Bob was the solution. So again, tune in again for next week. I have another great artist coming on the show. Be sure to tune in 7:00 Thursday night to the Power Hour. And I thank everybody, for being here tonight, and I'll see you next week.
Sherry Wynn.
I'm Mel Albin. I'm the host and the founder of the Jazz Confusion Power
My name
Hour.
is Dion Parson, and I'm honored to share my passion of music with you, our listening audience, through my cultural heritage.
Things can change for you too. If you want to be brand new, that is absolutely possible.